the grandma from the Princess Diaries movies is played by Julie Andrews, and she's this sweet older woman who just really, really gives off Princess Diana Regal vibes, and she's delightful, and again, she's played by Julie Andrews, and she's perfect, and Mia really falls in love with her grandma so quickly after she learns that she has another grandma, basically, the grandma that she never, ever, ever sees because she's in Europe. And she and Mia learn to bond and, like, share this friendship and to get to know each other as human beings, and it's really exciting and delightful and, like, wonderful, and the entire movie just makes you feel warm and cozy inside. Yeah, in the Princess Diaries books, that's not what happens. That's not what happens. So here's the thing. To be able to talk about Grandmere from the Princess Diaries books, I must first tell you about the reason that Julie Andrews was cast in this movie, okay? Because when the Princess Diaries book was first published, the movie started getting, auctioned off basically really quickly. And you know who bought the rights to it? Whitney Houston. Okay? And Whitney Houston was making this movie a masterpiece no matter what, and she succeeded. Okay? She succeeded. But then they found out that Julie Andrews was actually kind of interested, bless you! Julie Andrews was actually kind of interested in, like, the role of the grandma, but they couldn't just cast Julie Andrews as the grandma, and make her A, an evil, heinous woman, and B, give her basically no part whatsoever except for the princess lesson. So what they were gonna do, because in the Princess Diaries book, Mia's dad is alive. So what they did was they went, hey Meg, Julie Andrews wants to be in the movie, but in order for Julie Andrews to be in the movie, we need to give her a bigger part. And the way we're thinking about doing this is, killing the dad, and Meg went, kill him! Kill him dead! Kill him right now! Which is the only logical response that you could possibly have when you find out that Julie Andrews wants to be in your movie. So they just rewrite her from scratch, start her from scratch, Julie Andrews, as a character. This was not roast. That's fun. Julie Andrews as a character, Grandmere as a character. Now she's just grandma. Now she's cool, she's regal, she's awesome. She doesn't smoke cigarettes at all times like Cruella de Vil. She's not always drinking a sidecar. She isn't, one of those old ladies who tattooed eyeliner on themselves so that they are always ready to be out in public. No. Julie Andrews in the Princess Diaries movies is an angel, and we love her. Now let's discuss Grandmere from the Princess Diaries books. A, she hates Americans because she's French. B, she's French. C, she acts French. D, she has a dog with such a bad anxiety disorder that he licked all of his fur off. E, I'm losing track, so I'm gonna stop counting or numbering or lettering or whatever. She's always smoking a cigarette, Cruella de Vil style. She always has a sidecar in hand, and she's mean, specifically to Mia. So when you first start reading about Grandmere, she's judgy, she's bitchy, she hates everyone, she's the grumpiest person alive. And then, once you've really decided that you're gonna hate Grandmere for the rest of your life, she will do something to surprise you. Okay? Because Grandmere might be grumpy, she might be bitchy, she might be emotionally unintelligent in all ways, shapes, and forms, but if there's one thing in the world that is true, it is that she loves Mia Thermopolis. She loves her granddaughter. So, when her granddaughter goes camping on one of the little Princess Diaries, like, in between her books, that's like 50 pages, a little novella, and Mia doesn't have anywhere that they can shower in. The place kind of sucks. You know who stops by randomly to check on her granddaughter? Grandmere. She goes to the middle of nowhere, North Dakota, to go check on her granddaughter, even though she had said that she was judging her daughter or granddaughter for going on this trip. What does she always do? She brings Mia what she needs. So she took all of their friends back to her super fancy hotel in the fanciest part of town that they could find in North Dakota, and lets them all shower and lets them all use all the, like, bathroom things, and, like, gets them a bunch of food that's not camping food, and she just spoils all of them rotten because they're Mia's friends. And that's what Grandmere does over and over again. Does she judge Mia's choices? Yes. Does she end up accepting Mia's choices in the end after continuously trying to change Mia's mind on them for like 6 books? Yes. Does she, in the end, turn out to be a really great grandmother even when she has kind of proven herself to suck over and over again? Yes. And you know the number one way that you can prove that Grandmere not only loves Mia, but loves Helen Thermopolis and Mr. Giannini, and Helen Thermopolis' husband, Mia's stepdad? Because when Helen and Mr. Giannini have a baby, you know who's most obsessed with that baby out of everyone in this entire extended little weird family? Grandmere. And you know who's most obsessed with Grandmere? Mia's little brother, Rocky. He talks to her in his little, he can't say R, so he's like, Grandmere! And Grandmere is like, Rocky! And they hug, and they play together, and they go shopping together, and it's so cute, and it's so lovely. And anyways, I love Grandmere. I used to hate Grandmere as a child, but Grandmere is the best, and we should all love Grandmere. And also, thank you, Julie Andrews, for being in the movies, because, like, chef's kiss, amazing. Okay, bye. Lily Moscovitz in The Princess Diaries is not a friend that Mia can trust, and Mia secretly, like, knows that deep down in her heart, but she actually also continuously assumes that Lily Moscovitz is her best friend, and the best friend that she will ever and could ever have, and she thinks that she's so lucky to have Lily Moscovitz as a best friend because Lily Moscovitz is a genius, and all of Mia's friends are geniuses. And Mia is so impressed by the fact that she has so many geniuses for friends because all of her friends are in the Gifted and Talented program. And sure, she's technically also in the Gifted and Talented program, but Mia's only in the Gifted and Talented program so that she can learn more math, specifically because she's so bad at math that they put her in the Gifted and Talented program. And no one ever corrects her on this, ever, until like the 5th book when she finally starts dating Michael, and then she's like, oh, Michael seems to be under the impression that I'm in the Gifted and Talented program because I'm also a genius and because I'm talented and because I'm a talented writer. It took everything in me not to laugh in his face. Ha! He thinks I'm a talented writer. I just happen to write. And it takes her, it's an entire thing, okay? And here's the thing. Back to the Lily Moscovitz of it all. Mia goes on for an entire book about how she's talentless and has no talent and how she's so jealous of all of her friends for not having a talent and how she's terrible at everything that she does. And Lily just looks at her and goes, I know your talent. And Mia's like, Lily knows my talent, and then I asked her what it was, and she wouldn't tell me. Max, get off of her! Never have a dog. And if you have a dog, never get a second dog. And if you do that, never get different gendered dogs. Just don't do it. Don't. It's not worth it. Anyways. So, Lily goes, I know your talent, and then she keeps it. She holds it hostage from Mia the entire time because Mia should be smart enough to know what it is. And she keeps calling Mia, like, stupid for not knowing what her talent is when Mia has such low self-esteem continuously because A, she's a 14-year-old girl, and because B, and a bigger part of this, she has a really bad best friend who doesn't believe in her in anything that she does and literally mocks her for everything that she does and makes her feel like a terrible person and a moron and really uses the fact that Mia has such low self-esteem to raise her own self-esteem. And it drives me insane because Lily is the fakest of all of Mia's friends, which is saying something because Mia becomes friends with Lana Weinberger. And you know what happens when Mia becomes friends with Lana Weinberger? Mia realizes that she was only not friends with Lana Weinberger, not because Lana Weinberger was a raging bitch, but because Lana was under the impression that Mia was just as mean as Lily Moscovitz, because Lily is so mean to everybody that she meets. And this doesn't change in the movies, okay? This doesn't change in the movies. We see Lily in the first movie. In the second movie, she's actually a pretty decent friend, and she really does try, and that's really well done. Thank you, Shonda Rhimes, for fixing it. For fixing her. But in the first movie, Lily is mad that Mia is keeping a secret from her. Mad that Mia is becoming like them, i.e. taking care of her hair. And do I wish that they would have just given Mia curly hair the entire time? Yes, but also in the books, Mia has a short blonde hair, Anna style, if you will. So in the movies, when they cast Anne Hathaway, they had to figure out how to make her dumpy or give her a makeover. And the way that they did it was they gave her the bush of hair and glasses. And then they had to take away the bush of hair and the glasses. And we're supposed to believe that she is able to take care of her hair to make it that perfect straightness every day. And you know what? That's fine. Gary Marshall said, and I accept, okay? But also, here's the thing. My sister had that bushy hair. She didn't have the glasses, but she had that bushy hair and the pale skin and the thick eyebrows. So when I see Mia Thermopolis, I really just see my big sister in the beginning, and it makes me so happy because Nana would never say, my sister, I call her Nana, would never say, somebody sat on me again. But also, My dogs are not getting along. It's fine. Just ignore it. Apparently one of them is... Stop it! Get off of her! She doesn't like it! Be right back. It's easier to pick him up, and he can't do as much about it. And also, he's the aggressor. Yeah, him. See this? See this? This is the face of sheer evil! So people sit on Mia in the movies because she's so unnoticeable, because she's so awkward and so quiet, no one pays attention to her. In the books, that is not quite true. Mia is just an awkward 14-year-old girl who has no idea how to person. But people notice her. She is noticed. That's the reason that Lana even, mocks her half the time, because she's noticeable, because she's there. And Lily has always noticed the fact that people, A, notice Mia, and B, have this inherent trust of Mia that no one will ever have for Lily, because Lily is so aggressive and so blunt and also pretends to be a good person and do these good things, but every good thing that she does is just so that she can get more famous for doing the good thing and feel like a better person than everybody else. And because of that, I do prefer Movie Lily. People can hate Movie Lily all they want, but you know what? They fixed her. They fixed her in that second one. You're not getting to her again. You're in these arms for good today. That's a lie. I'm putting him down directly after this, but Muffy deserves reprieve for a second. Anyways, I could go on about Lily Moscovitz for days, for weeks, for months, for years. Look at this face. Look at this face, the face of evil. Look at this face, the face of evil. You see the face of evil? This face is not letting me sleep all week. All week. Because he keeps waking up and going, where's my sister? I need my sister. So that he can harass and attack her. And he's looking for her again. I literally had to get him drugs. I got drugs. It's not actual drugs. It's these. They're just calming bites. He hates them. I cover them in cheese and then sneak them into his food. But whatever. Be free. Anyways, adios. In the Princess Diaries book series, Mia and Michael are supposed to be soulmates. They're supposed to be meant to be with each other, made for each other. Anything that you want to say, that's what they are. They are made for one another. Specifically because the author chose it that way. She wrote them to be, in love with each other from the get-go. Here's the thing. If you made a drinking game where you read the Princess Diaries book in one sitting, if you were listening to the audiobook or something and you had to take a shot every time Mia compares Michael to Josh Richter, or Josh Richter to Michael, you'd be wasted. You'd be wasted, okay? It happens all the time. But here's the other thing. Michael already has a crush on Mia in the first book. And I never fully realized it until I was doing this reread. But Michael is already super into Mia. He makes jokes about helping her and then it's oh, but what would you give me for helping you? And Mia's I could walk your dog for you. I could do the dishes for you for a week. And he gets annoyed and is never mind, Thermopolis, I'll just help you. Because he wants her to say that she'll go out with him or something. And it's just continuously hinted that he keeps trying to ask her to the school dance and something keeps getting in the way. And he's tutoring her so that he can spend more time with her and their knees keep bumping into each other. And it's all these things that are very high school and they're very 14-year-old. But here's the thing. The thing that bothers me about this is he is a 17-year-old boy. He is the same age as Josh Richter, the creepy senior who's dating Lana Weinberger and also hitting on Mia when he finds out that she's a princess and then assaulting her. And being a complete jerk, douchebag, horrible person, etc., etc. But Michael already has a crush on Mia. And he's known Mia since she was in kindergarten, which means that she was 5, he was 8. Fine, whatever. When did his crush start? Should we be concerned that he, who has known this girl since she was 5 and is now 14, has a crush on her? Or are we just supposed to see it as this pure, wonderful thing, even though they do still get together when she's 14 and he's 17? Because yes, they are soulmates, and yes, I would absolutely die on the hill that by the final book in the series where Mia's still a teenager, not the adult series, they are meant to be for each other, made for each other, etc., etc., etc. But the part that bothers me so much is that I never fully understood that even in the first book, while Mia's having a crush on Josh Richter, Michael's having a crush on Mia. And it will never not bother me now. Because I'm bothered. I can't decide if it's creepy or not. I can't. I need to decide, but I can't. Because it's weird. But also, he's Michael. He's her soulmate. But it's still weird. Okay, bye.
Guys, if Mike Faist had been announced as the official casting for Haymitch in the new Hunger Games movie, I would have made several videos about it by now. The two most confused men on the earth right now have got to be Jason Earls and Mike Faist. Jason Earls woke up yesterday and found out that he was going to be the Vice President of the United States. And Mike Faist woke up yesterday and found out that he was Haymitch Abernathy. He's been talked about for the role in the same way that people would be like, oh, I hope Taylor Swift writes a song for the soundtrack. Also, Mike Faist is like 30, and I know that I've talked on here before about how the kids should not be played by kids. They can be played by adults. However, 30 is pushing it. I meant like 18 to 22, you know, like what they do in every TV show about high schoolers. But now I've been tagged like 40,000 times in this video of somebody saying that Mike Faist was announced as Haymitch Abernathy, which is just simply not what happened. Trust, if something huge is happening in the Hunger Games world and I haven't made a video about it yet, it's not real. Real or not real. Real or not real. We have to be exercising this skill right now. I'm not a boxer, nor have I ever considered getting into the sport of boxing. But if you were to get into the sport of boxing, I feel like a fundamental part of the sport is not to dish out what you can't take. And if you can't take what you dish out, then maybe it's not the right sport for you. If your first reaction to losing is to just assume that your partner was a man, maybe you weren't a very good boxer in the first place. If you can't take a punch like a champ, then I feel like you're missing a fundamental of boxing. I don't know, I'm not a fucking boxing expert, but like, I feel like you should be able to handle taking a good punch to the face if you're gonna get into boxing. I feel like that's a pretty fundamental part of the sport. Like, you quit in the ring after less than a minute, putting everything about who your opponent could have possibly been aside to quit after less than a minute in an Olympic boxing ring. I'm not a boxing expert, but to me that tells me that you're a shitty boxer. Like, that's just my professional opinion. And it makes Iman look like a fucking powerhouse, because she is. My proposal for the cast for the new Hunger Games movie is to do what they always did on Disney Channel when they wanted to do like a flashback to one of the characters' family members. And it was just exactly the same cast, but they played like a corresponding ancestor and they dressed up in old-timey outfits. Let me know what you think of this idea. Actually, legitimately, my biggest and most sincere fuck you to people who post pro-ED content on TikTok. You're a bad person. You're a bad person if you do that. But here's how it's gone for me, okay? I've had body dysmorphia since I was 6 years old. I've had an eating disorder since I was like 8 years old. I'm 24. Do you want to know what that kind of shit will do to your body as an adult? Do you want to know why you don't see nearly as many people really intensely struggling with eating disorders when they're in their 20s? It's because they're dead. Dead! They are dead. And now those obsessive thoughts pertaining to my body revolve around cardiac events and things that could now happen because of damage that I have caused to my body because of eating disorders. My digestion has never been normal. It's never been normal. And yes, I'm lactose intolerant. But you know what made it a hell of a lot worse? Fucking starving myself. And you know what else that they're not going to tell you about starving yourself? Your farts are going to reek. You are going to stink so bad. Your breath is going to smell. You are going to be stinky. And no amount of body spray or perfume or deodorant is going to mask the smell of your absolutely rancid fucking farts. Self-hatred is not a powerful motivator when it comes to recovery, but for me, fear was. And I realized that I was afraid of having a fucking heart attack. And I was frankly afraid of everybody talking about how bad I smelled. And then you have so many popular creators on here who are just using their platform to glorify their eating disorders, and y'all are eating it up, no pun intended. But then to make matters worse, the commenters feed into it. And on any video like this that I'm making right now, all the commenters will just be tagging the various ED creators. Like, the comments on these videos are a literal sea of pro-Anna content to the point where I think I'm just going to turn the comments off if I start getting them on this video. I haven't really talked about eating disorders on here because I think it's really difficult to talk about them without somehow glorifying or feeding into pro-ED content somehow. Because this shit is so insanely competitive. And it makes me so fucking sick to my stomach that this is becoming a trend again. Like a trendy disease. It is the deadliest addiction. It is the deadliest addiction. You will die. You will die if you do not recover. And it's not gonna be fast, and it's not gonna be pleasant, and it's not gonna be fucking pretty. What you do with your own body and how you choose to recover is your own business. But glorifying your fucking eating disorder online is my business because it affects me, and you have to fucking stop. I've literally ranted about PE on here before, and I'm gonna do it again. I'm 24 years old and still get anxious thinking about the prospect of entering a gym class because of how intensely I was bullied in every single gym class all the way through grade school, simply for not being as athletically inclined or as good at following lots of directions as everybody else in the class. Not only that, but all of the PE teachers I had who allowed this bullying to go on and at times actively encouraged it. If I wasn't running fast enough, the girls would make fun of me. I had cellulite on my legs. The girls made fun of me. I didn't have a thigh gap. The girls made fun of me. I didn't know the rules to kickball because nobody ever explained them to me. So everybody yelled at me. And of course, I don't have depth perception, which means I can't kick a ball. So every time I had to kick the ball, I would publicly humiliate myself because I didn't have the choice not to. And these things sound so trivial and silly as a 24-year-old, but as a 14-year-old, I couldn't even sleep because of how anxious I was about entering into that kind of environment every day, to the point where my last term of ever having to take a PE credit, I made myself so sick that I missed almost a month of school because I was so terrified of being in that environment I couldn't handle it anymore. The bullying, specifically in my gym class, was so intense that it completely bled into all of my other classes, and I almost failed several classes because of how anxious I was about going to school and having to be in that class. And I know my bullies were 14 as well, but I do not forgive them because I knew better than to treat people that way at that age. And I don't forgive my PE teachers either because they saw what was happening. They could have done something about it, and they actively chose not to, and at times they fucking encouraged it because they wanted me to participate more and they thought it would motivate me. Like, call me bitter, call me stuck in high school, but that really fucking impacted my self-esteem, and it bled into my adult life. And I'm not going to give the people that made my life a living hell every single day any amount of grace just because they were 14 and 15 years old, because they knew exactly what the fuck they were doing. And a fucking decade later, it still affects my self-esteem and mental health. I do not have patience for bullies, and I'm not going to be nice to them even if they're children, because that shit's going to follow people into adulthood.
The one piece of media that I can't relate to a lot of my generation about is the TV show Phineas and Ferb. And this is not because I didn't watch Phineas and Ferb, but rather that I had to stop watching it very early on around season 1 because it was starting to drive me crazy and it was starting to turn me into a kind of Javert from Les Mis type character because I was really Team Candace. I really wanted her to finally nab that elusive Phineas, that Ely Ferb, and for her to finally receive the vindication and the apology from her mother that I believed she deserved. And at 8 years old, I became a bit too invested in this plotline. I didn't see it as a bratty teenager not being able to rat out her younger brothers. I saw it as a quest for justice, a battle between truth and lies. And every episode, she would come so close to nabbing them. It was starting to make me lose it a bit. I was 8 years old, sitting at the kitchen counter in the morning. I'd be muttering stuff like, they can't keep getting away with it. It's not right. They can't keep getting away. No one believes her, but she's telling the truth. Someone needs to believe her. And that's when my parents were like, okay, so we're only gonna do Cartoon Network now in the mornings. We don't like what Phineas and Ferb is turning you into.
Okay, so I'm currently reading Powerless. I'm reading it on my iPad actually. And I'm reading it to do a rant review on my booktube because I want to do a video about like these Hunger Games copycats and how they completely missed the mark and no one will ever be like similar to the Hunger Games, even if you have like a deadly trial with like teenagers, because people completely miss the point. The point of the Hunger Games is that it's social commentary. Like Suzanne Collins was literally watching like Big Brother and also everything that was going on in the world, and she was like, I have something to say, I'm gonna say it in this book. And people completely miss that. Like, I feel like I love when books have social commentary and when they mean so much more, but I feel like as of like late, like I feel like post 2020 books now are just there for like the romance, and that's fine if you want to just read like romance or whatever, but that's not something that I want to read about. Anyways, that's not even what we're here for. Okay, what I'm here for is I need somebody to explain something to me. Okay, because something is not clicking, and I don't know if like maybe I'm slow, maybe I don't know what it is, right? So in this world, there are people who are powers, and these are the people who are like fighting in these trials. That does not make sense to me, because there are people who don't have powers. There are ordinaries, and there are mundanes, and then there are elites. So the ordinary are ordinary people. Mundane people are people who have powers, but they're not like that great. And then you have the elites who have the powers. The mundanes are just there and to fight for like entertainment. Ordinaries don't fight. That doesn't make any sense to me. Why do you have the people, and then it's like the ordinaries are treated like trash? So it's like, why do, and like the elites are like treated like very special. So why are the elites the one fighting here? Wouldn't you want to like off the ordinary, because it's so much more? It's like, not saying like elite is rare, but like at the same time it kind of is. So like, why are you trying to get rid of the elites and not the ordinary? And like people who are ordinary are like treated as if they're, and then it's also like the whole trial doesn't make any sense, because there was a plague that like wiped a bunch of people out. So what are the trials here for anyway? Like, you already don't have that many people because the plague wiped people out. So what are the trials here for? Like, it literally feels like the author literally was like, what if the Red Queen and the Hunger Games had a baby, and then start making systems but didn't really like think about it? Because it's not making any sense to me as to why the elites are the one fighting in the trial when they are the only people in this world who are like super strong. And I can understand if it was like they want to keep the elites like small, or I don't, but it's like that's not how the book is written. Like, it's not like, oh, we want to keep it to like a minimum amount of like elites so they don't, I don't know, that's not, and maybe because I'm only like 50 pages into the book, but that's not how the book is written. So, and it's just like, I'm not understanding how people, like, I don't see other people complaining about this. Like, I don't know if it's because people who read this book pretty much read it for mostly the romance, or they're new to fantasy, or they don't really read a lot of fantasy. But I don't understand like why I haven't seen people comment on this. Like, I've seen people go like, yeah, it's bad. I think I've seen one other person on TikTok talk about that, but it's not adding up to me. I don't understand it. I'm not gonna hold you up, and I don't know if it's because I'm slow or the writing is just that terrible. Sometimes when I'm filming like for a YouTube video or a TikTok and I've just been there for a long time, I always end up doing something like very weird, like saying something weird or doing something weird, and I'll reflect back and I'm like, yeah, you definitely were a weird girl who got hot. Okay, I've never been one of those girlies who've been like really cute my entire life. Like, I've been cute, but I wasn't like a hot girl like my entire life. Yeah, I'm definitely a weird girl that got hot. Thank God for that. Thank God I know how to make people laugh. You know, I'm very funny, very beautiful. But it's very apparent that I was weird growing up. So I was talking to my friend Levi about Powerless, because even though I just uploaded a rant review on YouTube, I just cannot get over how atrocious that book is. So I was ranting him about Powerless, and I was telling him about how she has these powers, that she's faking having powers, and she pretends to be psychic. And he was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. That sounds like what happened in Psych. And I've never seen Psych before. It's on my list of things to watch, but I just haven't gotten to it yet. So it was like, yes, it's about this guy who pretends to be psychic, and his father was an ex-cop, and his father taught him how to pretend to be psychic. And I'm like, that literally happened in Powerless. Her dad was one who taught her how to be psychic. And he was like, yeah, there was a scene where this guy was like sitting across from this girl at a restaurant, and he noticed that the guy was like kind of like kept smiling, and he was like a little nervous, and he kept checking his pocket, and people only check their pockets when they have something that they don't want to like lose or get stolen in there. So it's very obvious that the guy was going to propose to the girl. And I was like, that's literally a scene in Powerless. Literally, there's a scene where she's being interviewed, and the interview lady is like, yeah, show us your power. So this guy comes up, and she like notices that he has dirt on his pants, as if he was like, you know, on one knee. And she notices that there was a box in his pocket, and that he was like, he had a smile on his face all day. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that's literally the scene. But it's crazy because in the book, to me, it didn't work for me in the book, because it just didn't make any sense. Like, how, like, I don't know, I don't want to be like, oh, how did you notice all this? But it just doesn't make sense that she connected it to him being proposed to. Whereas in Psych, because there was a woman sitting across from him, it made a lot more sense. But it's just crazy how much this book copies other things. And like, yeah, no one is like original, but you're flat out stealing scenes and plot lines from other pieces of media. And like, I know the author was like 18 when she wrote this, but I don't know how she's getting, I'm sorry, I don't know how she's getting away with this. Like, the more I talk about it, the more angry I get. I am going to be doing a rant review on Reckless because I need to read this train wreck. I'm sorry, like, it's pissing me off so bad. I need to read it. I don't know if that makes sense. Personally, for me, I don't mind hate reading things. It makes me laugh. And it has a plot line, so I don't mind it, because I know a lot of people like get all up in arms where people like give rant review about things. Personally, for me, I love them. And also this book, Powerless, even though I hated Powerless and I gave it 2 stars, it got me out of my reading slump, because I was only reading like manga at the time. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing a rant review on it, but I'm just like, how is this author getting away with stealing literal plot lines from other things? And like, yes, no one's original and no one has like their own ideas, but when you're stealing things from like word from word or bar for bar, you need to be arrested, I fear. I don't know if anyone's gonna care about this video because it has nothing to do with what the niche of my channel is about, but I just want to speak about how disgusting the whole Brooke Schofield situation is. I was in 8th grade when Trayvon Martin was murdered, meaning I was 12. I also started Twitter for the first time that year, and one of my very first few tweets were about the injustice that he faced, me following the case every day, and me also joining the Black Lives Matter movement because I was so upset. I did go to a primarily black school, so all we talked about was what happened to him and the injustice. And so the fact that she was 17 at the time and her excuse was like, oh, I was a child, and like, yeah, I get it, you know, you grew up in a conservative family, whatever, but it's just absolutely insane to me how black people are not treated as humans. We're never treated as humans. We're never seen as humans. And then we have to like face the consequences of that racism on top of that. And then non-black people can get on here and the internet and like say whatever and say the most racist and egregious things ever. And then someone will be in their comments like, oh, we forgive you. And it'll never be someone who looks like this. But it's just absolutely insane to me. But I'm not surprised. I don't watch the Cancel podcast because the co-host is Tana. I used to be a really big fan of Tana, and then a bunch of those videos of her saying the N-word resurfaced, and I never was a fan of her again. And she's had to make several apology videos of her own. And I thought it was really weird that the podcast was called Canceled, knowing that she had been canceled. Like, she's problematic. She's been canceled for like very stupid things, but she's also been canceled for like very serious things. So the fact that you name your podcast Canceled and you're profiting off the fact that you were canceled, I was never going to trust Brooke to begin with. But I just want to state my 2 cents in how I'm not surprised at all.
A couple weeks ago, I made a video where I was mainly calling out the hypocrisy of liberals and progressives who showed their support for BLM in 2020 and wanted to defund the police and prison reform and change the justice system in 2020, but in 2024 are getting behind Kamala Harris. And I was calling out the hypocrisy of it all. And that video started off as, if not Kamala, then Trump, and you're a Trump supporter. And then it was, you know, you're lying about Kamala Harris, and then it was you're being anti-black. And that video was never intended to be at Black Americans because I didn't think that Black Americans were even in support of Kamala Harris at the time. I was mainly speaking to mostly white liberals and progressives who were very excited about Kamala Harris being the Democratic nominee for presidency. And I could have clarified what I meant shortly after, but honestly, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted by America. And I took that video down because I realized that it wasn't contributing to furthering the conversation. In fact, it was being used to contribute to the violence that is being used against people of color right now. And, you know, I was emotional when I made that video. I have been very emotional. I'm emotional right now. I have been consistently emotional on this app. I've been very vulnerable on this app. And these videos that I make, it's not videos that I ever wanted to make. I make these videos because it was out of necessity. The US media wasn't talking about the genocide in Gaza. So, yes, I feel not only emotional, but I feel rage and anger and frustration. And sometimes you're not thinking about saying all the perfect things. You're not thinking about protecting people's feelings all the time. You know, I've seen so much death in the last few months. I've seen babies whose heads were decapitated. And not just one, not just two, not just three, plenty. I've seen thousands of videos by now of children whose bodies in Gaza are completely ripped apart. I've seen a burnt pregnant woman whose body was burnt to char, and doctors trying to retrieve the baby that was in her belly. I've listened to Palestinian men recall being tortured in Israeli prisons and how they were raped by dogs. I am mentally fucked up. I will never be the same. I will never be the same. And I feel rage and frustration along with so much pain. And I sometimes ask myself, is that rage acceptable? Is it tolerable? And it feels like it's not. It's not, especially right now. It's not acceptable. A couple years ago, I started a documentary where the premise was to capture the voices of communities who are often marginalized and have no seat on the global stage, and to give them a spotlight and to bring their stories to people in the Western world in hopes that people would find human connection, that people would see that they are just like us and that their lives are equal to us. And essentially that we would care. We would care about what happens to people in the global South. And what I found, you know, right off the bat was that a lot of people did not care. But then when October 7th happened and people saw the genocide that was happening, people did care. But I also have been humbled to realize that people care to an extent. People care to the extent that it doesn't affect them. And they can't afford to bring that over here. They have to take care of themselves and their families and their loved ones. And so they're not willing to go and do the most for the people in the global South who are suffering. And I guess that's understandable, right? Like, we all want to protect our loved ones. But I can't help to wonder, is that the mentality that so many bystanders had when our ancestors were being colonized and enslaved and genocide and massacred and going through apartheid? Isn't that the mentality that so many bystanders had as our ancestors were being tortured and enslaved and all of that, right? Like, then how can we be mad about what happened to our ancestors if right now in this very moment we're perpetuating that same rhetoric onto so many innocent people in the global South? And so I ask myself often, I find myself asking myself every day, can the world be saved? And the only chance that the world has at being saved at this point is if it happens together, if we're all locked in together. But, you know, in the last few weeks, I realized just how fragile our relationships are to each other and how easy it is to manipulate these relationships and to, you know, completely stomp out any unity that happens. And it's such a loss of innocence for me, because I genuinely believe that, like, if people cared and if people knew what was happening, we would actually be able to make change. These politicians and corporations are not just killing people, they're killing the environment, they're killing nature. So many people in the global South have to migrate to the Western world because of our consumerism, because of our garbage, because of how much pollution we put out into the world. We are destroying their habitat. We are destroying their environment. And we take no accountability. And we allow our government to continue the carnage that they are committing across the world. And I don't feel like the global South has enough time. I think in the next few years, we're going to see more and more people coming through our borders. And it's because of us. It is us participating in the system and allowing our government to continue doing what they're doing. Our government and governments around the world are not putting an end to climate change. They've come out with more ways to continue climate change with AI and everything right now. And I ask myself, like, can the world be saved? And like, it's been a humbling experience to know that I don't think so, because it has to happen together, and for it to happen together, so much that is above my pay grade. Like, we are so divided, and I don't even know where to begin to like make these connections. And I thought that I was doing my part by bringing their stories to people in the West, but like, it's not enough. And I feel like I'm not doing enough, and I just feel like I have to mentally prepare myself to seeing more death and being numb to it. The main reason that Americans do not care about the genocide happening in Palestine is because the media, the news cycle, Hollywood, the US government are pretending like it's not happening. Just like they have been pretending like the illegal occupation of Palestine that has been happening for the last 75 years has not been happening. If they wanted us to care, we would care, because they would be talking about it 24/7. They would be reporting about it 24/7. Meryl Streep would be giving speeches about it at the Oscars, but they're not doing that. And it is fundamentally the main reason why people have reduced a full-blown genocide that is being live streamed to a single voter issue. It is why people are calling the current party that is committing this genocide the lesser of two evils. And I feel that that is incredibly dangerous, because you are giving them permission. You are signaling to them that a genocide is not the worst thing that they can do, because you fear that the other side could do worse. And this is all information. All this information that they are collecting on us is being used against us. Back in November 2023, I made a video where I said liberals and progressives hate Donald Trump more than they hate seeing Black and brown people die. And one of my mutuals, Frederick Joseph, who is an incredible writer, stitched that video. I'll never forget it, because I was shocked. He said that post-2020, he came out with his very first book called The Black Friend. And in the book, he detailed his experience navigating America as a young Black man. And the book went on to be a bestseller for weeks and weeks and weeks. This was all during Trump's presidency. When Joe Biden came into office, Costco and major other retailers sent back tens of thousands of copies of his books back to his publisher, saying that now that Joe Biden is president, we feel like the conversation surrounding race will change and that people won't care about race anymore. Do you guys understand how crazy that is? Like, they are projecting how we're going to feel before we feel it, because they've collected that much information on us. They understand us better than we understand ourselves. They understand how to emotionally trigger us. So when I say that if they wanted us to care about something, we would care. And the fact that people have reduced a genocide into feeling nothing for it is actually crazy. It's actually insane to me. And, you know, I don't blame people, because I understand that this is another level of intelligence that we are not even aware of, right? Like, they're using intelligence on us, like artificial intelligence on us, to understand what can emotionally trigger us. And the fact that they're not reporting on a genocide, you have to understand, what is the game being played here? When I made that video, I was talking about how during Trump's presidency, he had the Muslim ban, and liberals and progressives were up in arms and they were protesting. Fast forward to Biden becoming president, and he abruptly pulls out of Afghanistan, which sends the country into a frenzy. We watch people fly off of planes. We saw people handing their children and babies over to US soldiers. I will never forget that for all my days. And do you think that liberals and progressives cared? Do you think that they protested? Not a single protest happened, right? And not only that, Joe Biden freezed Afghanistan's assets which caused Afghanistan to go into a famine because government officials and teachers and doctors were not getting paid. And not only that, he said that we're going to give half of Afghanistan's assets to 9/11 victims. So essentially, Afghanistan ended up paying for 9/11, even though they had nothing to do with 9/11. None of those 9/11 bombers were from Afghanistan. They were from Saudi Arabia. So I say all of this because I don't feel that people are looking at what's happening objectively. Just a few weeks ago, someone on TikTok made a video about how they work for a nonprofit organization that supports undocumented immigrants, and how during Trump's presidency, they received large sums of donations. Soon as Joe Biden went into office, those donations stopped. Even though Joe Biden has kept many of the same policies that Trump had during his presidency, especially when it came to borders. And I can't help but to feel like, why is it that we're not like holding Democratic leaders to the same standards that we would hold Republicans? Cop City is not happening under Republican leadership. It is happening under Democratic leadership in Atlanta. Yet the outrage is not anywhere to be found. But I can't help but to wonder if if Cop City was happening under Republican leadership, would the media and the news cycle and Hollywood and the US government, well, mostly the Democratic Party, be drumming up fear and panic among us? Yet people are not discussing these things. What's happening at the border, with Cop City, with international issues, a genocide. I mean, if this is my last video, because TikTok has been taking down all my videos, I just want this to be the last one where I'm asking for you as an audience to confront even your own feelings, your own values. When you are being triggered, emotionally triggered, can you look at your feelings objectively and be able to ask yourself, is what I am feeling in this moment, is it authentic or is it manufactured?
I think this is something that people are confused about. No political ideology guarantees that you will be a good person. Some of y'all don't have empathy. So, now I am not a gymnastics expert by any means, but even when people come on here to say, oh, but Simone Biles, like sometimes she's stumbling, sometimes she doesn't land the da-da-da-da, or it's not like perfect or whatever, so how is she even da-da? Even I think you're stupid. She's doing things that no one else can do. Like, people are like, well, how is it score so much harder? It's just so much harder to do. Like, nobody else can do those things, because obviously if they could, they'd be doing it. But they can't, girl. Like, how y'all hate participation trophies in sports, but the second somebody is so much better than everyone else, y'all want to be like, well, how is it possible that she just is? Like, she's just better. I don't know what to tell you. They gotta give her credit for. Listen, if you can do 4 flips, do 4 flips. If you can't, well. Also, why am I crying watching gymnastics? Like, I literally cried. I was watching the all-around finals, crying. like Suni Lee. Honestly, the entire podium. I'm again a once every 4 years gymnastics watcher, really, except for the clips that sometimes they post on Twitter. But it's such an impressive sport to me because it's, again, one of those sports that I'm like, the skills that you need to have to do the sport at all, I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, none of these things are normal things that anybody can do. Do you know what I mean? It's like when it's like soccer or something like that, I'm like, a regular person can kick a ball, not as well as these people can do it, obviously. But like a person can do the mechanism required for this sport. You put a regular person on that fucking beam, girl, maybe they can walk in a straight line, maybe. Like, you can't do any of the things. You can't do any of the things. That's why I find it so impressive. But yeah, that whole podium, I'm like, guys, why am I crying? Like, this is so, oh my God. And they were so happy. Oh my God, it's so good.
I've been seeing a lot of Hamilton edits that kind of recap what's going on with the presidential election and kind of like the state of the nation at the moment. And sad to say, I love them. But aside from being embarrassed by my own cringe, I have to say I think they're pretty useful. Like when I think about our understanding of like U.S. history and U.S. politics and like what people, specifically like kids, are learning these days, especially in school, not a lot to understand like the severity of what's going on necessarily, but they do know Hamilton. Like, everybody knows Hamilton at least a little bit. And so what these edits are doing, for better or worse, like them or not, is putting what's happening in the current moment in like a pop culture context that makes it easy to understand and easy to digest. And yeah, Hamilton wasn't entirely historically accurate, but that's not the point. The storytelling, the character development, the emotion, all that stuff is giving context and giving landscape to the current political moment. And that can be a really helpful thing for people, especially for like younger folks who don't quite get exactly what's happening right now. Because yeah, if you have a history of like hanging out in politics or knowing about politics or caring about politics or anything like that, this moment seems like pretty crystal clear what's going on. But at the same time, if you're like 14, 15, 16, you're like, I know what's happening is important. I know that the people like who are kind of at play here are a big deal, but I don't really like get it. This can be like kind of helpful. I guess I'm saying I like the edits because I'm cringe, but also because they're like a helpful learning tool and y'all should keep making them. It's been over 300 days since October 7th. It's August now. You can feel it in the air that we are about to shift from summer back to fall. That is 300 days of destruction and despair and brutality, and every single time we think this can't possibly get worse, it always gets worse. So much so that people are starting to be numb to it. A lot of people are starting to accept that this is just what life looks like now. It is what it is. We've all tried our best. Go back to Starbucks, go back to McDonald's, carry on. We can't do that. I am here to remind you right now that we cannot do that. Just a few days ago, the IOF bombed multiple schools in Gaza yet again. And in fact, just a few hours ago, they dropped off a truck full of bodies to be buried in a mass grave. A truck full of bodies. I know there's a lot going on right now and that the world still spins. You've got personal stuff going on, the stock market just crashed, the Olympics are on, the election's up next, and I get it. But we cannot stop talking about what's happening. We can't, because this isn't normal, and we shouldn't let this be normal. The first of the month was the other day, which means for a lot of people in the United States, it was time to give out even more money. Rent was due, bills were due, folk needed to go grocery shopping, etc., etc. As you get it, it's just the mundane hustle and bustle that comes with being a part of a capitalist system. But this is not just true for the United States. This is true for people around the world, including the people who fled Palestine to Egypt for safety. Because the journey doesn't just end once they've raised enough to make it to Egypt. They still need money to survive, to pay rent, to have groceries, to pay for bills, to pay for medications that they may need, because we all still live in a capitalist system. Got a little bit of money left over from rent day and you're willing and able, I have a way that you can help at least 8 families that have been displaced. Trying to raise $10,000 a month, so you can do this on a monthly basis to support at least 8 families with the cost of not only living but of starting your whole life over. And you can send funds to the places listed right here. And in the little note section, instead of saying anything about Palestine, because you know how they are, you can leave like a thank you note or a flower emoji, just to keep things moving. Again, I know people have bills. Trust me, I have a hospital bill on the way that I am not looking forward to. And I know a lot of people have been trying to help as many families escape and make it to safety as they possibly can for months. And all of that is so real and so legitimate and so important. But we also have to remember that the struggle doesn't just end once they make it to safety. And if we can do anything to help, then we should. Most of the language used in like oppressor-oppressed relationships is like the same. It follows the same systems and the same cycles, but nowhere is that clearer than in the idea of infighting. Because whether it's light skins talking to dark skins, or black men talking to black women, or white women talking to women of color in general, it all boils down to the same, oh, but if you talk about this, then you're giving the man or the system power, you're dividing us, that's what they want. And what they never notice is that the man or the system or whatever is already doing its job, and saying that just perpetuates that system. Like the job of like the white man or racism, it's already doing its job when it created the dynamics that make colorism. And we all have to live by that and at least exist in that realm. And by shutting down any conversation about it by saying, oh, that's just being divisive, or oh, that's just infighting, that's what they want, is only making space to perpetuate that harm. And the same holds true for like when white women say it, or like when men of color say it to the women in their communities. It's like you're already benefiting from the system of racism or the patriarchal system. And by shutting down any conversation about it, you are the one perpetuating that harm. And they never notice that. Like, every single time someone says it, they says it like it's some aha moment or it's like some gotcha. And it never is. In fact, to me, it is the biggest tell that you're on the wrong side. Because the only reason you'd want to stop conversation or chalking up to being divisive or bad or whatever is because some part of you knows that you're going to lose the little bit of power that you have. And you don't want that. So you just want us to shut up so you can carry on, carry on. It's just so obvious, and yet they never stop saying it. Ever. I try not to get involved in things online, especially things I don't know about. And I don't know anything about that redhead man. But I will tell you that it is a cold day before any white person tells me, or any person of color, or any disabled person, or any poor person, or anybody who's known struggle, that the reason we don't want a revolution is because our bellies are full. We don't want this revolution of which y'all constantly speak of because we know it's a bad idea, because we have the lived experience, because we've done the work, because we know that y'all haven't. Because y'all refuse to get it on and pop in and expect us to do it, let's say that we do. Let's say we risk our lives, because that's what you're asking, people to lay down their lives for this revolution. What is y'all's plan to prevent the rise of fascism? What is y'all's actual, tangible, concrete plan that you're going to put in place to prevent these same social systems from reappearing? Y'all haven't dismantled racism or the patriarchy or ableism or capitalism. You haven't even dismantled those biases and prejudices within yourselves. And yet, I'll think of revolution like you think of the Hunger Games. You think you're all Katniss Everdeen and everybody gets to be the star, but y'all forget just how much that girl lost. She lost her home, her sense of self, her hearing, almost everybody she's ever loved, including her sister, who she risked it all for. And I don't even remember what else she lost because I haven't read the book in forever. And y'all always forget that at the end, Coin doesn't become the new leader, which is what y'all would let happen. Katniss takes Coin out because she knows she's about to become this dictator who's willing to sacrifice children. Because Katniss has been at least self-aware and observant the whole time. Y'all get on here with these big, bold ideas of change, asking people to sacrifice without doing any of the work systemically or within yourselves, and then start calling names when people, in fact, do not want to sacrifice themselves on your behalf. It's not that our bellies are full, and it's because our bellies aren't full that we can see straight through your BS and refuse to participate in this nonsensical revolution y'all want so bad. So Kamala Harris picked Tim Walz to be her running mate, and tons of people are cheering, and of course some of the criticisms are already rolling out. And I just want to remind y'all that two things can be true at once. On one hand, Tim Walz is an imperfect person. This ticket is an imperfect ticket. There are no perfect politicians, and they're going to make decisions and have made decisions that are worthy of scrutiny and judgment and pushback. And even if they were a perfect ticket, which again, they're not, we should continue to push them and all our politicians to do the right thing, like calling for a ceasefire. And in the same breath, people can celebrate. People can be excited. People can have an ounce of hope and joy for once. People can accept that this is a good thing for, at the moment, with no ulterior motives. Right now, the VP on an absolutely historic presidential ticket is a former teacher who pushed to have free breakfast and lunch for students, accessible menstrual products, access to reproductive rights, a whole host of really great things. There is space for him and for Kamala to grow and for this ticket to take on some much harsher stances on some pretty big topics. And also, this can be a time for people to cheer and to have joy. And we do not need to go back and forth on which one of us is right, because two things can be true at the same time. We don't talk about the fact that Katniss Everdeen did not want to be the star of the revolution enough. For so many of y'all, she is this pinnacle of rebellion and resistance and this person that you all hope to embody, because I guess all you watched were the movies. Because what y'all consistently overlook is that Katniss lived a life now full of struggle and strife and chaos and loss and grief. It was hard to be in her shoes, and she didn't want to be in them because nobody runs towards rebellion and violence and bloodshed, except for y'all. And I think it's because y'all do not sit with the weight of what you're asking for. Because again, y'all refuse to do the work, and you haven't walked in the shoes to know that there is work to be done. And I'm not saying that the fact that Katniss didn't want to be a part of the revolution or didn't want a revolution is reason that we shouldn't have one. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that even that fictional character was a character who knew how to scrap, who wanted to survive, who knew what her limits were and stood by her guts and was willing to make sacrifices on her own personal sacrifices. And even then, when the revolution knocked, she wasn't looking to answer because she wasn't looking for attention. She wasn't looking for this moment of stardom or whatever y'all think is going to happen. She wanted to go home. She wanted her home to be safe. She wanted her sister to be safe. She wanted food on the table. Her goals were clear. Y'all are not that person. Y'all want the clout and the stardom that comes with being so woke and aware that you're willing to burn it all down, but you're not actually mad enough to do it. You want someone else to do it. And I know that because I and many others can't get y'all to donate to mutual aid funds, to organize, can't even get y'all to contact your own legislatures for more than 3 days in a row, no matter what the cause is, whether it's Geno Slide or keeping your public library open. Like, enough. Enough.